Hi, sixth graders. Hello, historic sixth graders. We're doing a lot of history together right now. My hope for you today is for you to feel some joy. Try to find a little joy in something. I am thankful to still be teaching, and I find joy in when I chat with you guys or email back and forth. Some of you have sent me some pictures of some great creations that you've made, and just chatting with you. You guys are always really nice. Have a great day today, and today we're going to continue with what happens when the Spanish conquered the Aztec and the Inca. And the Maya were, again, they didn't have the great civilizations. They had abandoned their cities, but they're out in small groups. The Maya, actually, Malinche, that you're going to hear about in the video, helps Cortez or some of the tribes that were enemies of the Aztecs, some smaller groups of Maya. I'm going to go back for just a second. Cute ember pictures. The comic here is, I don't know if you guys remember, you might be too young. In 2012, there was a really scare. We didn't know about a pandemic then. Well, we knew about it, but we didn't know this would happen. They were afraid because the Mayan calendar or the Aztec calendar that traveled from both things, the Mayan calendar ended at 2012 and it was December 12th. So 12/12/12 was the date. And they thought there was some significance in that. So there was a lot of people kind of worried that that would be the end. Luckily, we made it past that. So just like we'll make it past this. Ember says hi. She's getting really big. Her legs are getting really long and her paws still, she's grown into them. She misses all of your attention too. I was really hoping she'd be able to get in the classroom with you guys so she'd be really good around people. But we still give her lots of love, so she's around us a lot. All right, I'm going to ask today, we haven't done Foursquare Notes, your favorite game, in a little while. Any paper will do if you have lined paper, white paper. Try to make the 4 boxes. If you just put it in sections on lined paper, that's fine too. Whatever you can do, and then you're going to send me a picture at the end of your notes for today. And that's just to help you remember. Writing helps us process it and helps us to remember it in a different way. So we're going to talk about the history from conquest in the 1500s when the Spanish conquistadors took over the Native Americans. They formed Spanish colonies and they really kept everybody else out. So only people from Spain were allowed in those colonies because it was all about getting the gold and silver from those areas. And they took a lot from those countries. So part of why some of those countries still struggle, Mexico's economy isn't as big as the United States, is that when the Spain came in, they took a lot of that gold back to Europe and to Spain. And so Spain is still a wealthy country today, but it's because they took a lot from those colonies in the New World. And then we're going to talk about how they get their independence and become countries that they are today. One of the things you need to read carefully about, an important agreement. You remember when we studied Canada, England and France were really against each other. They fought in Europe and they fought in the New World between the Great Lakes area. The French and Indian War was really between Great Britain and France, and then the Indians helped the French. Well, Spain and Portugal kind of have the similar relationship. They share a border in Europe. And so they were always kind of struggling, fighting over each other, trying to push each other so that they could get more of the land from each other. So they were, when the age of exploration started and Columbus returned, they immediately signed the Treaty of Tordesillas. They decide they're going to divide the world. And if you look at the map carefully, they're going to use the 50-degree west longitude line. And that's called the line of demarcation. And that's going to separate. Portugal gets all the land to the east, and Spain gets all the land to the west. Now, when you look at that deal, in the New World, Spain is definitely getting a better deal. The result, and why this is important to know about today, is that most all of Latin America, the countries that we were talking about, speak Spanish, but Brazil speaks Portuguese because that was considered East, and they started the colony of Portugal. And that is Brazil still today. They don't speak Spanish. They speak Portuguese because of the Treaty of Tordesillas. So this is a little chart. You're going to copy this. Sorry, this was copied in box number 1. So just make sure you follow the slide. You'll see it up here in the corner for what you need to copy down. So this was box number 1. The treaty is just to read about, and then you're going to copy this in box number 2. And if you can copy it in the flow chart, that's fine. It just shows how the boxes are related. If you just need to copy the information that's inside, that's fine too. And this comes from textbook. If you can get to the online textbook and you want to read the pages, they're on the slides. I'm going to kind of summarize it. We're going to try to keep things easy for you since we're doing this distance learning and not there to help you out. So from Columbus to the Treaty of Tordesillas to Cortez and to Pizarro. That's what we're going to talk about today, is the conquistadors, Hernan Cortez and Pizarro. Not pizza, Pizarro. So there's going to be 2 videos that you watch. The first one is on Cortez and his conquest of the Aztec. watch and listen to it carefully if you want to take notes. It's always optional, but it's really good to take notes. It helps you learn and process. The second video will be about Pizarro and the Empire of Gold, so down to the Inca. And he had even fewer men that made it across. Make sure you listen and read. These are some amazing stories in history. And then after the conquest, Spain develops their colonies. Mexico will be in Middle America, Mexico and Middle American countries. And then New Spain will be in Peru. So they're going to have kind of two new colonies. And then what happens when these cultures meet, there's going to be, for the first time, it's called the Columbian Exchange, named after Columbus. All of these plants and foods like pumpkins from the New World go to Europe. Chocolate for the first time. Montezuma gives Cortez chocolate, and it's going to come to Europe for the first time. So we have this complete change in our environment. We also are going to have diseases like what we're seeing now, we know with global travel, that they travel much faster and are harder to control. So that began a lot with the Columbian Exchange. I mean, there were always people traveling, but this is going to, the age of exploration is going to be one of the biggest migrations of people to different continents, and not just of people, but of fruits and vegetables, plants and animals. The horses are going to come from Europe, and that's the first time that we're going to have them in North America. So read a little bit about the Columbian Exchange. It's just summarized on this slide, and you're going to copy that in box number 3. And just read this one carefully. This is how Spain organizes its colonies. They had a very strict class system. People that came directly from Spain had much more power because the king wanted to keep people loyal. And he didn't trust as much as generations got mixed in with the natives that were there. Mixed was called mestizos. And so they couldn't own land. They didn't have as much power. And then the natives were slaves. So there was definitely a class system that was not fair in any way. But it was to keep the power with Spain, with the most Spanish people. So criollos were people that were born in the colony, but their parents were 100% from Spain. So each generation, it got harder, because if you were born in the New World, you didn't have as much power as the peninsulares that went to Spain, or that came from Spain. So you're going to copy this in box number 4, just to kind of understand how they set up that hierarchy of who had power, who could own land in their new colonies, the class structure. And then you're going to read a little bit about independence, the story of Miguel Hidalgo. He was a priest, a Criollo priest. And so he's going to ring the church bells, and it was the Church of Dolores. And he gathers, just by ringing, that was a signal that there was an emergency when you rang the church bells during that time. And he gathers over 80,000 fighters. So read through this slide carefully about how Mexico, but he's going to actually be caught by the Spanish and convicted. And he's going to face the firing squad and lose. And Augustine de Iturbide will step up. So that would be like our George Washington. Miguel Hidalgo was kind of like Mexico's George Washington to fight for independence. And the Spanish caught him and they killed him, sentenced him to treason because it was against the law as a revolution. Mexico's trying to revolt against Spain and get their independence. And so Iturbide is going to continue that. Now, we're coming up next week is Cinco de Mayo. That's not Mexico's Independence Day. That's in honor of a battle, the Battle of Puebla. Actually, after Mexico won its independence, the French come in and try to take it. And that battle at Puebla, that Cinco de Mayo kind of honors, and it's more of an American holiday than a Mexican holiday. It's a Mexican-American holiday for people to study or celebrate their heritage and their traditions and their culture. But it started more in the United States than it did in Mexico, but it's to honor that battle. So it's not an independence celebration. It's not like our July 4th. So just read carefully. Know this, you don't have to copy it down. It is optional. You can copy it down if it helps you remember. This is history you'll need to know again. You're going to see this again when you get into world history in 9th grade. So the more that you get, it'll just be easier for you to build that knowledge and that foundation of the world and to understand. So Iturbide took over for Hidalgo, and Mexico declares its independence in 1821 in September. And then next is South America. So look at that map carefully and read. And the independence leader is going to be Simón Bolivar for most of South America. So similar to our George Washington in the colonies, Simón Bolivar is going to try to unite all of South America into the United States of South America to work as one big continent country. But everybody else rejects him. And so he ends up winning the northern part, but he was from Venezuela. And he has an interesting story as well. He had gone to school in Spain and had played badminton against the prince who will be the future king, Ferdinand. And he ends up beating him, which you're not supposed to do. So he was already a rebel or a revolutionary leader at that time against Spain. And then San Martin is going to be another leader from Chile, from the southern part, and they're going to meet. They're going to push against the Spanish troops with Bolivar from the north and San Martin from the south. So read these slides carefully to understand. And it just goes over the history of how these countries win their independence from Cuba. And then we will have the Spanish-American War at the end of the 1800s, and that's Cuba at the end that you'll read. Once you have read the slides and understand about San Martin and Bolivar leading the countries to become independent and how they became the different countries, please send me a picture of your Foursquare notes and then complete the check-in for today, the 4/30/20 Conquest check-in, and just make sure you do your best on your writing. And you can use the slides to help you. Have a great day.